Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, Happy New Year and welcome to the latest episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined for this episode by none other than Ian Congdon-Lee, who played Ted Fisk. Ian, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Listen, it's a pleasure. And you know how unreliable I am. And I know it takes forever and ever. Now, my mum always says, Ian, you're the most unreliable person. Yeah, ask me to do something. I'll say, yeah, I'll do it. Then an hour later, I'm so bad. And I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, it has been some time. It's taken us to get here. Like, I think we first sort of were going to do it in the first year of the podcast. I think you were like one of the fourth or fifth guests lined up, and you know, for one or whatever reason, it didn't happen. But we're here now, so thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. Well, what we'll do, Ian, is we'll start this episode the way we start every episode. And if you could tell us how you first got into acting.
Well, I'll tell you what it was. I was about 11. I went to a normal school. And cut a long story short, teacher said there, look, it's not academic. And talking to me, you won't believe it that I wasn't academic. I know I sound quite intelligent. Around about 11, my mum and dad turned around and said about going to a stage school. And, I went to a stage school called Barber Speak Stage School in Acton and started there. And it was the same school that Phil Collins's mum ran as an agency. And it was a stage school. And it worked out like you'd done, I reckon, around about 3 days of tap, dancing, modern dancing, ballet. Imagine me in ballet tights. Don't get overexcited. Ballet tights, singing. And I think you've done about 2 days of academic work. And from then, that's how I got into acting.
Right, brilliant.
That's how I started.
Yeah, and I was looking at your IMDb page, and I know it's not the most reliable, but before Grange Hill, you'd got quite a bit of work, didn't you? You know, you seemed to be in stuff quite a bit.
I was lucky, Neil. Like, even when I started at 11, I worked on loads and loads of stuff, and it weren't luck. It was like I worked out. In them days, you used to have a thing called equity, and when someone went to an audition, you had to have an equity.
Yeah,
they'd turn up, and there'd only be about 10, 20 people auditioning for a part, and they all looked the same, short. Like, I went to audition, it was quite short and tubby, not as good looking as me. Audition, and from the age of about, when I started there, I worked out this thing that when you went to an audition, there were people there, and you had to make yourself known. So I would go up to the cast of people, shake them around. How are you? Oh, you're looking beautiful. Walk around the back of town, give them all a kiss. And they remembered you the next time. And I was lucky enough, because it was really expensive to go to a stage school. It's like I think it was around about $2,000 a term.
Right.
That I started earning my own money and stuck at it. But I worked and worked. And I loved every minute of it. Got my equity card and then never stopped working.
Brilliant. And because like some of the things that you were in, I saw, because you were in that comedy No Place Like Home, which it's one of those things I just remember. I couldn't tell you anything that happened in it. I just remember it being on. But then you were like Henry's Leg, which was an ITV kids thing, wasn't it? And you had a principal role in that one.
Yeah.
Didn't you?
Yeah. Brilliant times as well.
Yeah.
Well, I would go and audition for anything. When you don't go to these auditions, they're brilliant. And they say, can you horse ride? And I say, yeah, I can horse ride. Can you roller skate? Yeah, I can roller skate. Yeah, I could do it. Couldn't do it, anything. and No Place at Home was brilliant. I was young. And then all of it. But I've done a part in Super Grand.
Yeah, I've been wanting to ask you about that one.
The worst American accent.
Because I watched a bit of that episode the other day, and I'll be honest, Ian, I could only watch a little bit that you were in because I just thought I can't listen to him talk for half an hour. So you you played a character called Seymour P. Spender.
Yeah.
And as you just said there, he was an American character. You know, we're laughing and joke, but that must have been brilliant to think, right, I'm in Super Granny here, you know, like, because that was a massive program, wasn't it? It was huge at the time, like.
And always, I can't remember how old it was, but we filmed it in Newcastle.
Right.
And I done this American accent. And my old man said, Ian, how the hell did you get it? It's the worst American accent. And what? He said, I'm going to do it. What a time I'm going to have. The worst American accent ever. Right? But we went to, and we done scenes on a boat, and everyone was thrown up. But it was great times. But I'll tell you something now. What a time how I got the part. I was million years. I don't know. I'm a deaf now.
Brilliant.
Listen, it's getting worse and worse. It was between Irish, Cornish, and a little bit of American.
Brilliant. And you were in an episode of Press Gang.
Yeah.
I mean, being in Press Gang, because Press Gang was a massive program anyway, but you were in scenes with Aid Edmondson, who was playing the teacher. Now, if that had been me, I don't think I'd have been able to speak much. I mean, I've talked on here before about how much I love Rick Mail, but to have Aid Edmondson, working with Aid Edmondson as well, must have been something else.
But genius. And when we were eating on the bus, he would come and sit down and tell the best stories ever.
Yeah.
And I mean proper stories. And he said and everything.
Yeah.
And absolute legend. But I'm lucky enough to have worked with loads of legends.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, you're saying that because the next thing I've got you down as was Freddy and Max. And that, Anne Bancroft is in that. And Charlotte Coleman as well. And you were in quite a few episodes of that. But also, I noticed that Amara Sante, who was in Grange Hill just before your time, was also in an episode of Freddy and Max as well. But Charlotte Coleman, for me, like, everyone just says, like, just how good she was at just everything.
We was good friends during that. And I'll tell you this, I'll tell this, Freddie, because Freddie, that was one of the best shows I've ever done. It was written by Ian Clements and Dick Lefreno, who've done loads of things.
Yeah.
And Anne Bancroft and Charlotte Coleman, absolute genius.
Uh-huh. And
I was in all of them, and it didn't work, but it was one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And, there's some stories about that. When we was rehearsing in Brixton, so Anne Bancroft was doing all the rehearsals in Brixton, and Dick Clements, and they'd obviously promised Anne Bancroft like a Winnebago.
Yeah.
Like, obviously to me. And outside the rehearsal rooms in Brixton, there was a little caravan with a colour heater in it. And I'm not lying to you now. A little colour heater in it. And she'd go out like, I don't think so. And I'll tell you something now. It was one of the best. And Charlotte Coleman was brilliant. And she was a genius. God rest her soul.
Uh-huh.
I miss her. But that was the best time ever. And my old mate said, them two written that in. The only show Ian that didn't work and he was in it. Because I said, I can't mess up every show that I've ever made him. But, and it sadly, it didn't work. But it was one of the best times. She was a genius.
Yeah.
It just didn't work.
Yeah, no. I mean, sometimes they don't, do they?
Yeah, but most of the programs I'm in don't.
Yeah. Well, okay then. So we'll move on then to Grange Hill. So how did that one come about?
Well, I mean, I went for an audition, and I went for the part of Mauler.
Right.
and didn't get that. But they asked me to do one of his like psychic playing Ted in, which was I don't know what happened, but when they had all the American football stuff, what a crazy idea, slippery slope, and played sidekick then, and it went on, and then that's how it all started.
Yeah, because you've mentioned it there, the American football, the Gridiron Gang, as they were known, and it was just weird, wasn't it? Like, to throw that in. I mean, I know Mauler was in it as the bully, but he was a very different type of bully to what he'd had in the past.
Yeah.
But it was just weird having all these massive lads running around in American football gear, screaming, shouting, throwing kids around, and never getting caught by any teachers. There was never any teachers anywhere. It was like, what's going on?
Like they were in that disguise, and it was sad that I don't know. It's not my thing, but it just it's like carry on. It was like carry on up the Khyber. I'll tell you something now. But Neil, it was. I was like, oh.
I mean, the thing is, there, like you've mentioned, you getting the part of Ted Fisk, but initially you were just listed as Mauler's gang, number 3. And I know, like they would say the name Ted, and they would say the name Sid as well. I think that was it. Warren Bryan, I think that was played Sid. And Warren was one of those people who was in loads of things as well.
Yeah.
Because I remember him being like one of them big horrible bullies from loads of things as well. But the fact that you were just Mauler's gang member number 3, and like we said, the gang they just threw their weight around, didn't they? And they they tied kids to the cloakroom, and they chained Vince Savage to the bike sheds and stuff like that. Because it was mainly Mauler, wasn't it? Did all the talking, and he had his heavies behind him, and I just love the fact that you were there as well, because they were all like almost a clear foot taller than you as well, weren't they? Like,
you didn't need to mention that. Now. You didn't have to mention that, mate, did you?
Just the little angry Jack Russell type that was with them as well. Like,
Tom down here, Neil, because he's starting to well up away, pal. Yeah.
But I've got to talk to you about one scene, because there was a scene where the gang were chasing Teggs, played by Sean Maguire, and they thought they'd cornered him in the toilets, and they got a load of water balloons and threw them into the toilet. But it was actually Mr. Bronson who was in the toilet and got a soaking as well. Now, can you remember? Was he actually in there when you did it?
No.
No, right, okay.
He weren't, because he was another great actor.
Yeah.
But he disliked us. Well, he hated us, because obviously we're all kids.
Yeah.
And he was such a big professional, as you know.
Yeah.
Everything he'd done. Genius actor.
Yeah.
But probably didn't have any patience when none of us really half learned our lines, or actually made absolutely clearly no effort whatsoever.
I mean, to be fair, you didn't need to learn a lot of lines in that first series anyway, did you, really?
No, it was handy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a result.
Yeah.
Just went to keep my head down and carried on with that.
But there's another scene there then. Again, Mr. Bronson was involved, and it was when Ziggy and the lads had decided that they were going to do something about Mauler and his gang.
Yeah.
And they got a load of lads together. So there was Ziggy and his crew, then there was Mauler and the Gridiron Gang, and then there was Mr. Bronson, Mr. Griffiths, and the staff. And what I like about that, it was filmed like a Western. If you remember, it was all done like from like the three corners, and like all like the Western music playing. And then the other week when I was speaking to John Drummond about this scene, I said it's all there, and when it all goes off, everyone's running around, but John Drummond's just on the outside, just like telling people where to run, and he's not getting involved in any way. Trevor just wasn't getting involved in that one as well. But I love that, because of the way it was filmed, and it is done like that slow build up, and in the end it just goes off. Now, there was also then the last episode in that series was like the wear what you want type day. And obviously Mauler's lot were all dressed in American football gear. And they decided they were going to get Ziggy because he was meant to be going back to Liverpool. And the whole episode was about them trying to get Ziggy. And Ziggy and his mates painting the same face paint as them so that they couldn't tell who was on whose side. And it just ends with Ziggy jumping on the bus, shouting "Bye, Mauler," because he'd agreed he was going to stay with someone and come home. Now, I've got to say, a lot of your scenes were like that with like the likes of George and John, who played Trevor and that. But how did you get on with all them, really?
Listen, John Drummond, loved him more than he taught me how to shave, John.
Right.
This is the truth. And I used to live in Camden.
Uh-huh.
And I used to go and stay around with his granddad and all that. Very, very close friends.
Uh-huh.
And most of them were. And Josh as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, most really good friends. But it was like, some people weren't over keen on, but
yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll move on then to the next series 12. And at this point, sort of the Gridiron Gang had it was forgotten about. It had disbanded. Mauler still had a few heavies. But this is where, like, sort of, Ted was in it, where like spoke a lot more, and you had a few more lines. But did they come to you and say, look, we're going to give you a bigger part, or was it literally just a case of, here's your contract, come back next year type thing?
Yeah, they did start. I was lucky enough, touch wood, that they started. There's writers change and also producers change, and it went back to being a little bit more serious, and then we got more of a talking part, and it carried on from there.
Yeah.
And then it became just probably me and Josh.
Yeah.
Water. And it started off a little bit more better for me,
Yeah. And then in that series, there was a thing where Ronnie Birtles was turning 16, so she was going to have a party. And there's a cracking, I think it's one of the first times where you had quite a bit of dialogue. And they're having the dinner, and it's Ted walks over and sits with them, and he says things like, I'm here on behalf of Mauler McCall. And he said that he's heard you having a party, and that if he's got no other social occasions on the date of her party, he'd be more than happy to pop along with a few friends. And then the party was sort of more to do with, like, the fact that Trevor had started drinking. And it was sort of to show that. But there's a bit where Ted starts a fight with Robbie. He's like pushing him, and Robbie pushes him back. And then Mauler and Ziggy jump in. Ziggy's jumping in trying to break it up. Mauler's in there trying to throw his weight around. And it's Ziggy that actually gets kicked out of that one. Whereas Mauler and Ted sort of got away with it, which happened quite a bit. I've noticed in Grange Hill, the bullies at the start seem to always get away with stuff. And then they would always get their comeuppance.
We're lovable people.
Yeah.
Me and Josh were lovable people. You know what I mean? Got away with it.
Yeah.
I'm a cheeky smile, mate.
We've talked about the fact that, Mauler and Ted were bullies, and it was Ted mainly working for Mauler. Yeah. But they had a little business going where they were charging kids to put their bikes in the bike sheds.
I think that's fair.
Can you remember what Ted did to anyone who couldn't pay?
No.
So he had a stamp with IOU.
That's it. The forehead. Yeah.
Stamp it on the forehead. Yeah.
These nightmares are coming flooding back now. Thanks a lot, mate. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Brilliant. And there's another bit where Trevor owed Mauler money, and when Trevor gave him it, Mauler said, "I should charge you interest." And Ted says, "Oh, that's a good idea," and produces this calculator from nowhere, and he's there. He's there trying to work out what the interest would be. But Mauler just said, "Look," he just said, "Look, forget it. All right." And Ted did exactly the same. As I'm like sort of poked him in the chest, forget it, all right. And
that's one of my favourite scenes, though. That is.
So were you told to do that, or did you just do that?
Just done it off the cuff.
Brilliant, because I love that, because He was. I mean, Ted was like that, wasn't he? He was one of those kids who like probably wasn't particularly hard, but because he was mates with the
Yeah,
hard kids, he could throw his
yeah.
weight around.
I'm not asking you. I'm telling you.
Yeah, brilliant. And Mauler and Ted nicked Ronnie's moped, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Um, but can you remember what they were doing with it when they nicked it? So Ted was riding it, and Mauler was like he was like a matador. Yeah,
Let me tell you the story behind that. Yeah. So Josh, right? Josh was supposed to ride the moped,
right.
but let me tell you something else. Josh, who played ball, has got absolutely no balance whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean none. So he gets on the moped. I can't do it. I can't ride a moped. And they said, Ian, like, you're gonna have to ride the moped. When it was first written, it was like obviously Josh riding the moped doing
Yeah.
that. So I got on the moped, and that's how that done there. There's
Right.
like, oh, thank brilliant. But yeah, that was another great scene.
Brilliant. No, it is. It is brilliant. Like, that was also the year when Danny Kendall had gone missing. It was the big story, like, be it there. And Gonch and Ziggy were running a sweep on when he would return. And Mauler and Ted wanted the money for it and started chasing them. And they were chasing them all over the place. And
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it was when they were chasing them that
we
the
found his
lads the
body.
lads found Danny in the car. Now I'm only mentioning this because there was a memorial service for Danny Kendall. And then I need to talk to you about that because I've spoken to a few people about this.
Oh, geez,
It's quite obvious during that scene
I don't know
that
what I don't know what happened to us still. I don't
that
know.
nearly everyone in that scene is trying not to laugh. It's like it's so obvious when you watch it. They're like looking down at the floor or looking in the sky or like covering their mouth. It's just so obvious.
And I'll tell you who I blame for this. And I'll tell you who I blame for this. John Drummond, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so he started it off. And, and it's, every time the camera come fast and they were doing their speeches, he would go, John would go, oh, oh. And then it would just roll on and it'd say cut. In the end, like the director said, look, we're going to be here forever. We need to really, we're going to be here forever. Can we just please? And I said, no, it's not me. I said, it's John. Like, he's being stupid and all that. And he'd go, oh. And then everyone would laugh. And it took hours and hours planting a bloody tree for Danny Kendall.
Yeah.
Now.
It is. It's brilliant. And like I say, you speak to people and they're all like, yeah, it was hard. It was bad to film because because of that. Like, but it's just so obvious that everyone's trying not to laugh.
Well, what the thing is, what people don't realise, like we're all young people, and like when you get tired, you get silly, and you get giggly.
Yeah.
We're all like 16, 17, and that sort of age, and they didn't have much patience with it. But when you get giggly and that, we're all together, and you're tired for doing, sometimes we film scenes, Neil, you feel like film 10, 18 times.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing again and again and again and again. Mostly our fault, but again and again and again. But, yeah.
Brilliant. And that was also the year when you went to the Isle of Wight.
Now, let me tell you this, and I'll tell you, ain't gonna cost you a penny. The best time of my life, and I do that as well. The Isle of Wight. As I remember, I think we went there. We've done rehearsals there, 2 weeks rehearsal, and we been filming there for a couple of weeks. And we got our own money. We stayed in a hotel, but we used to go to nightclubs, and we obviously recognised there, so you get free drinks. And absolutely useless. What a bunch of useless actors. Because we get up in the morning and no one had learnt their lines. And we get on this coach, go somewhere else, all feeling rough. But, and I mean, really rough. And our own faults, not remembering any lines, and having to film. And it was absolutely best time of my life.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely useless. I'll tell you something now. Absolutely, I mean useless. But how we did all get a sack? If they could find a load of other kids who looked exactly like us, they would have employed them because we were really, really bad. Because we got money. They gave us money like as expenses.
Yeah.
And you go out to a nightclub like that night and you get those, make sure they're back in the morning, like, and they'd wake you up at 6, do makeup and costume. And I'll tell you something, how that ever got filmed, I'll never know. But yeah, great, absolute brilliant time. I mean,
it's horrendous. It's horrendous. Now, there's a bit there where you were out on a hike and had to walk through a field of cows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mauler was terrified and started running and fell over into a cow pat and blamed Ted, who also fell with it. But I'm assuming that was only done in one take.
Yeah, 100%. Because we weren't going to do it again. Even at that time, he said, "No, that's it, done now." And they're like, "Oh, well, no, that's it, done.
Yeah.
We've done it now. Let's move on to the let's move on to the next one." And like sometimes, like directors, and then we had some real, I mean, proper decent directors.
Yeah.
Near the end there, and I remember one of the directors saying that you're not going to get any better out of these lot. let's just fucking mark. Let's just mark that one because you ain't going to get no better out of them lot. And it was so right as well. You ain't getting no better.
Tremendous, brilliant. And that trip ended with Ted and Morley and Ziggy and Robbie joining forces to try and soak everyone at the barbecue with the hose pipe at the end, until they got caught by Mr. Mackenzie. And he let Robbie and Ziggy get soaked, but again, Mauler and Ted got away with that one.
That's what we do. That's what we do. That's how we roll. This is how we roll.
And those four characters joined forces again, kind of in a way where there was someone staying in the school, and Trevor said he thought it was the ghost of Danny Kendall. So he bet Ziggy and Robbie that they wouldn't stay the night in the school. When they were there, Mauler and Ted ended up going to the school to make sure that they were carrying out this bet. Now, so the four of them, along with Mr. Griffiths, tried finding this whoever it was. Now, Mr. Griffiths wanted to be stealthy with it because that was the way he'd been trained in the army and all that. But the lads, especially Ted and Morley, went in all guns blazing, screaming and shouting. Now, when I interviewed George, who played Ziggy, he said he loved filming that because it was just the four of you, and George Cooper, who played Mr. Griffiths as well. Now, need to talk there about George Cooper because everyone just says what a legend he was and great to work with as well.
He was, because I'll tell you the reason why. Is because he accepted, like he knew it was, and he'd been in everything.
Yeah,
that man. I'll tell you something now. You can't turn on a program back in the day. Back in the day, but that he ain't in. And I'll tell you what about him was like. Whereas a lot of the adults, and I don't blame them, to be honest with you, obviously got quite clearly annoyed with us. He never ever. He never had an angry word to say. Ever.
No.
And just a lovely, lovely person.
Yeah. The thing you just said there, you can't turn on a program without seeing, and he always looked exactly the same.
100%. He was born. when he was born, he looked like that.
Yeah.
When he left, he looked like that.
You genuinely couldn't tell, like when anything would have been filmed that he was in because he always looked like that.
A great actor as well. Absolutely
Yeah,
great actor.
brilliant. And they did eventually catch the intruder, and it turned out to be a lad who used to go to the school who we'd never seen before, but he used to go to the school, and he was homeless and staying there. And then that series ended with the school prom, and it was the first time I'd ever heard the word prom. Like no idea what it was.
Yeah, they went for these American things.
It was fancy dress, and Ted went as
Rocky.
there we go, there we go. And Marla went as Rambo, and said no one else could go as Rambo and no one else could go as Rocky. But obviously, Vince Savage tricked Trevor into going as Rambo. And then the pair of them were then chasing him around the school then until Mr. Robson turned up, who was also dressed as Rambo as well. And then that moved us on then to series 13. And Ted was in sixth form. It was just the first year of sixth form. And that series starts with Mauler doing the old classic Grange Hill joke of changing the direction, showing the first years the way to the hall. And Ted says to him, that's just a waste of everyone's time. And maybe Ted's like growing up a little bit here and maturing a little bit. And it was just a year. Bronson had left. Mr. Hargreaves, the deputy head, had joined the new deputy. And he took a bit of a shine to Ted, or Edward, as he liked to call him.
When I was floating. I got one.
Yeah. And he told you the sixth formers that Ted was someone who they should aspire to be like.
Quite true. I don't know why you're laughing there. I don't know why you're laughing for, because that sounds very, very wise to me.
But this seems to go to Ted's head, because he then starts having a go at people just on the yard, just like he was having a go at two first years who were just having their dinner. Make sure you clean this mess up.
Oh, but he was trying to help out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, your attitude stinks here. I was just trying to help out here, pal. This hurts. Mate.
Listen, I can only tell you what I've seen. You know what I mean? And then some of the first years come over and start having a go at Ted, because all they were doing was having the dinner. And he just walked off with his tail between his legs a little bit there. But this was also the year when it was a very subtle storyline. This Mauler had been playing cards with Rod the caretaker and owed him money. And we see Mauler trying to get money back after going back to their bullying ways. Mauler and Ted trying to steal money from the younger kids, and including Justine Dean. And they grabbed her, but Tegs arrived again, always the nemesis of Ted and Mauler, and got the money back and ran off. Now, I've mentioned Sean Maguire a couple of times, but did you have any idea that he would go on to have the career that he's had?
Yeah, because he was another, when you see people, they're great actors.
Uh-huh.
And he was a great actor. I've known him for a long time. He was a great Irish dancer as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
And my family knew his family in any case.
Uh-huh.
And even when he was doing well, in Hollywood, he rang me a couple of times.
Yeah.
Spoke, you know what I mean? And that means a lot to me, because, don't forget people, people you see on the way up.
Yeah.
Look after, because you're going to meet them on the way down.
Yeah.
And I think he's a great absolute great actor. I think he should be doing so much more than he's doing. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Obviously not his fault, but
Yeah, no, brilliant. As I said, there was a little bit of a subtle storyline now, but it was a good storyline because, like I've said this before, it showed that Mauler had become addicted to the gambling and playing the cards and whatever. And it showed him mugging people and stealing things to pay for it. And I just thought it was really sort of subtly done and really cleverly done, that one. And that's, people say it's one of the good things Grange Hill did well.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. And and that's what Grange Hill was great about, was doing it. But then sometimes the only thing I do say is sometimes they never took it far enough, and I know people who've got gambling problems.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
But sometimes, I always felt they didn't take it far enough,
Yeah.
or you know,
It did seem to come to a very abrupt end. That one, it was just sort of stopped. Now, I've mentioned earlier on about Ted throwing his weight around when he was in sixth form and and you said he was just trying to help. he was made a member of Mr. Hargreaves' vigilance committee, which was basically prefects. And Ted was on it, much to the annoyance of Morley, because Morley hadn't been picked. And Morley seemed to only want to be on the vigilance committee because Ted was and because Trevor was as well. And he eventually made it onto the vigilance committee and insisted on being called Francis. He don't want to be called Morley anymore.
See, this is another storyline where these things come from. And the thing is, I don't know whether they change writers every other week or something. No one sent anyone else the email about how it was going.
It was just funny the fact that, because Ted was there, Trevor was there, and Morley wasn't, and he was furious, and he was trying his hardest. And in the end, he decided that one way would be call me Francis. That so I'm more serious there.
And I think that's a lovely name.
Yeah.
My next child is going to be called Francis. Francis Neil Congdon-Lee.
Brilliant. Now, I need to ask you this because in one episode, Ted turns up with his arm in a sling, and Trevor asked him what had happened to him, and Ted just said, "I broke my leg. What do you think happened?" Why was your arm in a sling?
Listen, I haven't got the slightest idea. Listen, and then a lot of these things used to happen.
So it wasn't like genuine. It wasn't something you'd done. Like you hadn't.
No, I can't remember.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember. I do remember being asleep, but I can't even remember what the reason was. What's been the reason?
Because you never listen.
When you start doing research, why did my arm?
You never find out. You don't find. Well, certainly I never. Anyway, it was just what's happened to you. Oh, I broke my leg, and then it never. It gets mentioned, but the answer never comes up.
I'm trying to think. I'm actually trying to think that no. I got a clue.
It came into play, the broken arm, because when they were going to watch Mike Bentley do his run, the minibus broke down, so everyone got out to push it, except for Ted, obviously, because his arm was in a sling, he couldn't. And that series also ended with Rod, the caretaker, getting sacked. And he told Mr. McCluskey about everything that had been going on in the school, and Ted and Trevor lost their place on the vigilance committee, and Morley all lost their place on the vigilance committee. They all had to hand their badges back over.
Still hurts now. Still hurts now to this day.
And then that moves us on to series 14. Now, Morley had left.
Which series was I in?
5.
2.
5 you were in.
All right.
So Morley had left. And then this was also the year of your biggest storyline. So, because obviously Ted was seeing Chrissy Manning at this point. Now, did they come to you and say, look, we're going to put you in a relationship and then it's going to take this way? It's going to go this way as well? Or was it just a case of you reading the script and finding out?
No. So what happened was I got called into the production office with Ron Smedley, who was the producer and a couple of directors.
Uh-huh.
And they said, look, Ian, this is... And they gave me the option. They said, look, this is storyline's going to happen. And it was actually, as I remember, it was going to be Justine at first.
Uh-huh.
Then it was... and they said, look, this is what we want to do. This is the storyline we want to go down. Would you be interested in doing it? Going through it. And, it's a pregnancy thing. I said, yeah. And I said, yeah, 100% jumped at the chance.
Uh-huh.
They said, it ain't going to be easy. But, if you're interested in doing it, yeah. And I did, that's how it was. They didn't just give us a script. It was an option for me, yeah.
Yeah. Because, it was, like, really controversial, wasn't it? The fact that there was going to be this teenage pregnancy storyline. But when I've been looking through and it all starts off fairly innocent at first, and it's just a case of them just like they didn't even tell their mates that they were going out because he was a couple of years older than Chrissy. And then there was a party, and Ted told Chrissy that he didn't care, and he wasn't going to keep it secret anymore. And like I say, it was all sort of fairly innocuous, fairly innocent, fairly sort of the way teenagers going out is, just walking the streets and stuff, because you've got nowhere, you can't go out anywhere, you know what I mean. But Ted and Trevor, because it was literally Ted and Trevor seemed to be the only sort of two lads left at this point. And they started selling pizzas in the school.
Yeah, that was great.
And delivering them after school. And there's a cracking scene where Trevor's riding the bike.
And I'm on the front.
And you're in the basket, like a really low budget ET.
Yeah, there's no way he was going to get off the ground.
But it's great because like there's just the arguing and the bike falling over and Ted just saying, "Oh, do it yourself," and storming off and going to meet his girlfriend instead. This is where we then found out about Chrissy being pregnant, and Ted was blissfully unaware. Like, obviously the viewers knew, Ted didn't, and he kept trying to like sort of ask Chrissy out, but she was like really distant from him and didn't want to be seen with him and stuff. And then the news spread that she was pregnant, but the rumor was that it was a teacher. Yeah. Can you remember the name of the teacher?
You're
nearly there, yeah. Van der Groot.
Yeah. I'm quite good at this, isn't I?
Yeah, you are. You're getting really good at this.
I'm 53 now, and it's good 30 odd years ago. I'm not doing bad here.
And Trevor, being the good mate that Trevor was, he told Ted that this rumour as well, that it was Mr. Van der Groot. And when Ted went to Chrissy to ask her if it was true, she just got upset and stormed off. And when he tried to apologise, he went to apologise to her and said if she was in trouble, then he'd stick by her. She then said, "Well, I'm not in trouble, so you can go." And then she asked him if he was glad if it was a false alarm. And he said that he was glad. And he asked her, and she said she was glad as well. But when they were on the Outward Bound course, Chrissy went on an Outward Bound course then. And that's when it came out that she genuinely was pregnant. But at the same time, Trevor and Ted decided that they should hold a dinner party. Because Trevor's mum and dad were away. And so they asked Callie and Georgina.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
I mean, fair play to them asking them two to go. Do you know what I mean? Let's pick the two best looking to come to them.
The two girls did pick the two good best looking pieces, didn't they?
Brilliant.
You're so right. Lucky.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks. And they agreed to go. But then when they'd asked them, the lads realised that they couldn't actually cook. So they asked Sue from the pizza place if she could do the cooking. But under the pretense that they were doing this meal for some old people who Trevor knew, they might have got away with it too, only for the fact that Don, who was now in sixth form, was covering the shift at the pizza place for him. And because Sue had forgotten to give them the horseradish sauce, Don turned up at the house with the horseradish sauce, and the girls realised what was going on. And the next scene, we see Ted trying to clean the horseradish sauce out of Trevor's shirt.
Well, let me tell you this. That pizza place where Trevor and Ted worked, right? That was actually a pizza place on Elstree High Street. Yeah, right. So we used to sit there sometimes, like filming, and people would just. Like a couple of people walked in one time. Yeah. It was me and John there, and so just take him, just take whatever you want off the counter, give away pizza, and they go, "Oh, look, when you film, just take what you like, and it was a proper pizza place. Yeah, well, listen, sort them out to peace. Don't worry about that. And that, there's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant, yeah.
taking a dive there, like, and like I say, it was then that we then found out about Chrissy being pregnant, and it hadn't been a false alarm. Ted told her that he would stand by her, and he would marry her as well. But at the same time, there was scenes with Ted's dad, where Ted's dad was saying, you know, talking about the future and saying, eventually you're going to be married with kids, being married hard way, because he had no idea this was going on, and that Ted should enjoy his life while he had no responsibilities. And this starts making Ted start thinking then, I'm going, what am I getting myself into? And Ted was all not just worried about the fact that Chrissy was pregnant, but also about the fact that he could end up going to prison when he'd had a chat with Mrs. McCluskey about it, because of Chrissy obviously being below the age of consent. But Mrs. McCluskey then said it was unlikely that would happen, but he needed to tell his dad. And we then see a scene where Ted goes home and his dad's making spaghetti bolognese, and Ted tells his dad to sit down. And the very next scene, we see Ted and his dad at the table with their head in their hands and a ruined pan of spaghetti. It was all very dramatic. It was all very Hitchcock-esque, the way it was done. And Ted then went to Chrissy's house for tea, and the dad came home, and it became apparent that the dad didn't yet know. The mum knew, but the dad didn't know that Chrissy was pregnant. So Ted and Chrissy went for a walk, and when they got back to Chrissy's house, Chrissy's dad ran out and punched Ted in the face.
That was a freezing night as well. That was about -2.
Yeah.
Night shoot, yeah.
Was there much rehearsing of the punch, like?
Nah. I'm a professional. I'll take any punch. It won. No, it won actually, yeah. No, it won.
Yeah, brilliant. And then Chrissy then told Ted that she was keeping the baby. And Ted went mad and punching the lockers.
Yeah, and that hurt, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I didn't get no Oscar for that. No Oscar, and that hurt. I didn't get a thank you, by the
way. Yeah. That scene, though, when I watched it, Mr. Hargreaves comes over trying to calm him down. And Ted actually see you draw your hand back to give him a smack, but only for Mr. Robson to get in the way and sort of stop him from punching and getting himself into more trouble. And we then see Ted and Chrissy, because it was massive. It was a massive storyline about this girl being pregnant, or was she going to have an abortion, or was she going to keep the baby? And Chrissy said that she couldn't have an abortion because in her mind, the baby was already real, But they were just they decided that they would stay together. But Ted was still treating it like, I'm just their boyfriend, so wasn't seeing her sort of all the time. And Ted and Justine had an argument about Ted's attitude to Chrissy. Now, I love Justine Dean as a character. I think she's one of the best characters. But in this story, she doesn't half get involved where she doesn't have to. Do you know what I mean? She really got involved where she didn't have to.
Cheeky young lady.
Yeah. And Ted then has a go with Justine and saying that she was jealous. Chrissy had a boyfriend. She was jealous. She was having a baby. And Justine slapped Ted then. Another smack in the face.
Yeah.
Ted,
this is a smackable face, though. Yeah. You can see it right now.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but... And then there's a bit, I look, Ted and Trevor having a chat about the baby. And Trevor said that he wouldn't be offended if Ted wanted to call the baby Trevor.
Yeah.
Trevor Fisk. And Ted went for tea at Chris's house again. And this time, he seemed to get on better with the dad. He didn't end up getting a smack from anyone at this time. Now, it then moves on to series 15, which was your last series, and it was because of the way the storyline had gone. Ted had left Grange Hill, but obviously you were still involved, and Ted and Chrissy seemed to be getting annoyed with each other for all the time, for everything. And Ted had told Chrissy that there was jobs going in Southampton, but Chrissy wasn't going to go there. But eventually Ted decided that he needed to go to Southampton because he wasn't getting any luck finding a job at all. So he went for the job interview, but never told Chrissy he'd gone. And when he was staying at his mate's house in Southampton, after the interview, he ended up going out with his mate. Tony, wasn't he? Tony with his mate. And he ended up with another girl when he was when he was out. Meanwhile, Chrissy was having the baby in hospital. And when Ted came home from Southampton, he didn't go to the hospital straight away. He gave Justine a card for Chrissy with a tenner in it. And Justine had another go at Ted.
I thought it was quite generous, to be honest with you.
I mean, what about 1992? A tenner in 1992, you could have bought a lot of nappies, I
Thank you
imagine.
very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your back.
And Ted basically told Justine to mind her own business or she'd be sorry. It was proper threatening the way he did it. And Justine was then attacked in the school. And the police turned up at Ted's house and started asking him questions. And Ted sort of like admitted, because he thought that they were there about Chrissy.
Yeah, that's right.
Having like sex before the age of consent. But they were there about Justine being attacked. So like he hadn't realised he was confessing to a crime that he hadn't actually done.
You know, it's not the most intelligent person in the world. You know, yeah. Can't be handsome and intelligent.
No, we can't, can we?
No, we can't. Twin brother.
And then eventually Ted did go and see the baby, Chrissy and the baby, and he also told her that he was going to have to move to Southampton because he'd got the job. But Chrissy still didn't want to go. Now, Ted had, in the meantime, got a job washing dishes in a bakery. Do you remember that? All dressed in all whites and washing dishes. But he quit when he got the job. And but as I say, Chrissy still didn't want to go. Chrissy and Ted argued. And Chrissy spoke to Justine and said, can you go and stop him before he moves to Southampton? So Justine went round to Ted's house. And Ted wasn't in. And as Justine's walking away.
Effort, did she?
No. As she's walking away, the postman gave her a postcard from Southampton. And it was from the girl who Ted had been with when he'd been in Southampton.
I don't remember any of this.
Do you not know? Emma, her name was, yeah. And in the end, Ted told Chrissy everything, the fact that he'd been for this job, he'd been given the job, he told her about the girl. And again, he asked her to go to Southampton with him, but she refused because she said, there's no point because I don't love you, you don't love me. And Ted then...
It's a bit deadlier, mate.
Yeah. And Ted then left.
Yeah, on a coat.
And that was the last we saw of Ted.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about having to leave?
I'm still welling up now. You broke it, you didn't break it gently, did you? No, leaving was a hard thing to do. I'm glad it was the end. But, you know, I know, like, all Grange Hill fans and, you know, but one thing I am disappointed is that they didn't delve more into the pregnancy thing. That was the only thing. And which was slightly upsetting because they just didn't go into it deep enough, you know, about thing. And I think they just, you know, let it go there. But I enjoyed every minute I was in Grange Hill. It wasn't easy all the time. You know, it was hard times during that thing, you know, in it for a long time. And, you know, there was sometimes you weren't treated greatly on Grange Hill. And there's times when you go out and get abuse from everyone. Yeah. You know, it weren't all, you know, the greatest times of your life. Yeah. It was good. I wouldn't regret it for a minute, but it was hard as well.
Was it because initially yours was a character that would like throw his weight around? Did you get grief from that as well?
Yeah, constantly. And you know, I used to go out, like you just go shopping, and there'd be people who were nice. Oh, right, you're right there. Oh, right, Ted. But there are people really, really nasty and horrible.
Yeah.
You know, there was times when I was in, my brother, God rest his soul, who died sadly, would be in a fish and chip shop, and you get real abuse, and I mean horrible abuse. You know, and you know, there's times when I go home and like cry and think, why do people hate you when they don't really know you?
Yeah,
just the way of the world. You know what I mean?
A lot of people, even adults, have that problem. distinguishing between like real life and fiction, don't they?
Yeah.
As well, like I mean, it is a very common tale of from what I've heard about, especially certainly the people that played those nasty characters.
Yeah.
Really got a terrible time. And so, when you were on the program, who would you say your best friends at the time were? Like,
I'd say Josh, who played Warner, John,
yeah,
and George.
Yeah,
and three. Yeah,
brilliant.
You know, I'd like George went through a bad time, mentally, and I used to, go and stay with him. But, and John was, a great friend, and so was Josh. They were great friends.
Yeah, brilliant. I've seen a picture actually of you, George, Sean Maguire, and Lee Mack. I've seen that photograph, like Lee MacDonald. I don't know where it was, when it was, but it was
a charity do a Dunstable Hospital.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, so you left Grange Hill, but like you still continued acting.
I tried to. I'll tell you what happened. When I left Grange Hill, I had a family of my own, and when Equity was in charge, you go to an audition, there'd be 10, 15 people.
Yeah.
In the end, it started happening that you would go to an audition, there'd be 300 people there.
Wow.
Because Equity ended being any use.
Right.
There was no union, so you turn up to an audition, 300 people. What's the point?
Yeah.
And I've got family. I've got two kids. My kids now 29 and 21.
Right. Yeah.
But that time I had to think about family. And it just there wasn't enough regulation.
Yeah.
Didn't earn enough money there to do that. I wish I'd have carried on. If Equity had been kept on it, I would have carried on acting forever. But,
yeah. Because I mean, you did a few bits, like funnily enough, playing a pizza delivery boy in Me, You, and Him with Nick Hancock and Steve Punt and Hugh Dennis. But there's one very famous thing I've seen you in when you were in Birds of a Feather, and you were with Lee MacDonald.
Me and Lee MacDonald done that. Right, he's a great actor as well.
Yeah, and you seem to have been promoted there to the Mauler McCall role, and Lee MacDonald was Ted.
That's one.
In that one, like, because it's Lee Mac. It was him that didn't seem to be the one that didn't really have a clue about anything that was going on.
That was great. That's great. But I think my favourite time of acting was Freddy and Max and Grange Hill. Obviously, Grange Hill, Freddy and Max is the best time. But I moved on. I do a bit of DJ now.
All right, yeah, cool.
I'm an exec in Bedford, DJ there every Friday and Saturday night, or when I can.
Yeah.
But so all moved on.
But it was like a sort of conscious decision you'd made to move away from the acting.
Yeah, because I just think it's like just too hard. Yeah. You go to auditions, and I don't think there's no more like stage schools anymore. I went to Barbara Speake Stage School, and then it used to be Italian Conte, it used to be Corona, it used to be like 5 or 6 stage schools that you went there and they trained you acting, dancing, and everything. They're just not about anymore, and I just think it's a free for all now.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well, the fact that there isn't really any big children's drama programs anymore is a big difference as well.
And I was thinking about that. You bring that. I was thinking about it the other day. They don't even you just get home from school for like 4:30, and there'd be like a couple of hours of children's program. Now it's pointless or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's
because I think because the children's television channels have sort of diluted it in that way, and it's just on all the time. But there's nothing like Grange Hill, Biker Grove, Press Gang, Murphy's Mob. There was loads, wasn't there, that kids could be in.
So then no wonder why kids come home and get on their phone. That should be bringing back. But that's that's
so you've mentioned that you're DJing these days, because I saw a program years ago about Grange Hill to Albert Square, and they did a little thing at the end showing what different people were up to.
Yeah,
And you were DJing then.
yeah,
So you've kept that up, like.
I don't know how long for, but yeah.
And so, are you still in touch with anyone from Grange Hill now?
It tried to be, but to be honest with you, every now and then, it's not like not every week or anything.
Yeah.
You know, people have moved on, people have other lives. You
Yeah.
know, and the good thing is, you know, it's like people like yourself, you keep it going. You
Yeah.
know, these things, which is not really nice. You know, I love it. I love talking to people. I'm very unreliable, as you well know. You know, as you well know, this is the first and the last time. You know, when I get caught out.
Well, I'll be honest. Even this morning, when I sent you that message, are you still okay for later? I thought, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get here. I'll be honest.
100%. Listen, I'm as shocked as you are. I'm as shocked as you are. But no, listen, it's the first and last time. Please don't ask me ever to do it.
Okay, no. Right. So we are coming towards the end now, Ian, and you'll be pleased to know. So I've got a few questions. They're the same few questions I always ask at the end of every episode, and they are all Grange Hill related. So over the last couple of years, there's been talk in the press of a Grange Hill movie in the works. Phil Redmond's written it. What do you think of the idea of a Grange Hill movie?
Yeah, it all depends how well it's written, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't bother if I was you.
But if you were asked, would we not see a return of Ted Fisk?
Listen, I'll jump right on it. Listen, if I was asked, I'll jump right on it. I'll just slack it off right now. I'll be right up there.
Brilliant.
Just saying it, yeah. How much?
Tremendous. Okay, so I don't think I asked you this earlier on, but were you a fan of Grange Hill when you were younger?
Yeah, I think yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So other than Ted Fisk, who was your favourite character in Grange Hill?
I just said John. Trevor.
Yeah, Trevor. Okay. I know you auditioned for a part of Morley. If you couldn't have played Ted, is there any other character that you would have liked to have played?
Yeah, Miss McCluskey.
I think you've made a great Mr. McCluskey, to be honest.
I would do, wouldn't I, as well?
Yeah. And okay, so the final question then, Ian, is why do you think there is still such affection for Grange Hill?
Because at that time people used to come home at 4:30, 5:30, and then watch it, and it meant something.
Yeah.
You know, and people would come in and they'd wait to get home, and they'd watch it, and they could relate to it.
Yeah.
You know, Grange Hill through the whole time had its ups and downs. You know, it lost its identity for a while, I think, and then and then, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Ian, thank you so much for coming on eventually. And
I knew you were going to say
that. And talking to us, giving you, you know, your take on your experiences and time on the program. It's been brilliant talking to you. I say this quite a lot now, but I haven't stopped smiling the whole time we've been on. It's like my face is genuinely sore. Like if I'm smiling, like it. But no, it's been brilliant talking to you.
I've enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed it, actually.
Thank you. Honestly, it's been great. It's been great speaking to you. So thank you so much.
Thanks to all the Grange Hill people out there who still appreciate and still think of us and still follow podcasts like this.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you. And to anyone that's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.